Happy Friday, October 27th, 2017. This is release day for the new Intense and Matchup Hybrid. I have videos for both of those out, so definitely go check those out. I also did something a bit different with some short little teasers for the Daredevil Danger and the All Out Show Off. I want to be kind of spooky and mysterious. I mean, Halloween's coming up, and while it's not really my thing, I mean, the ball name just kind of made something work there with the Danger, and the circus theme kind of loosely fit with the All Out. I think it may have been a little too mysterious. I mean, not a whole lot of people watched either of them, but you know, sometimes stuff works and sometimes it doesn't. So if you saw them, let me know what you thought. I also have new lighting here, so for those of you that were saying that I needed some lighting and are now blinded by the glare off my face, there's my new lighting. So our first topic here is Columbia's kind of commercial, I guess you'd call it, for the spoiler featuring Diana Zavjalova, or Diana Z, I guess, as most people call her, since they can't pronounce her last name right. There's been a lot of buzz around it for fairly obvious reasons, both positive and negative, of course. Now, out of respect for the other companies in the industry, everyone is kind of generally advised and requested not to take shots at or complain about or criticize any of the other companies. But ribbing and teasing and parodying them is totally fine, I think. If not, it's freaking hilarious. So I had a lot of fun making my parody video. Even Diana enjoyed it and shared it, and I got a bit of buzz out of it from kind of the higher echelons of the bowling world. So I do want to thank her for being a good sport and for understanding it was all in good fun. Bowling could use some more fun, so we all had a good laugh, and it was great. Now, hers still has about 100,000 more views than mine does, which is a little puzzling, but I mean, whatever. Back on topic here. Now, I'm not a political person, but I do have fun, frustrating political opinions. You have one camp saying that this is objectification and exploitation of women. The other camp says she's empowering herself by embracing her femininity and her body and everything, and the real story for me here is that good-looking women who could realistically take all your money are attractive, and men are the target audience of bowling ball advertisements. So the math here is so simple that even the lady that wants deer crossing signs move out of high-traffic areas can figure this one out.
But it seems to me that it's so irresponsible of us to allow these deer crossings to be in areas where these deer are so likely to be struck by oncoming traffic. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Now, is it too risque for the bowling ball industry? I mean, who knows? It's a pretty different angle from the norm, so that makes it just a little bit more shocking, even though the actual content isn't quite PG-13 stuff. But I mean, the bottom line in any marketing or advertisement is getting someone's attention and making them remember your product. And while you can debate its rather simplistic nature, I mean, sometimes the simplest and most common sense approaches are the most effective. Furthermore, if that advertising actually works, I mean, doesn't that say more about the consumer than it says about the company? Either way, I'm comfortable knowing that Storm will never come to me to ask me to bear almost all for a bowling ball advertisement, because all we have to do to sell equipment is, you know, just advertise the actual equipment. Moving on. I found myself with a shortage of ideas for the podcast this week, and then remembered it was my podcast and I could talk about whatever I wanted to. So I thought I'd talk about me for a bit. I mean, who doesn't love talking about themselves? Honestly, though, I've had some questions about my background, how I got into it, just about my career in general, and so I thought I'd share some of it. I made some comments here and there about some bowling, about a few things, but I've never really said much about my own personal bowling. I can remember being in a bowling alley a few times when I was 4 or 5. Mom and Dad used to bowl league for a few years together until my little brother came along, and then life got a lot more busy and expensive. They actually have some really cool league trophies from back then. I mean, they're still kind of cheaply built like all trophies used to be, but they're kind of grandiose. I mean, they're pretty big, so those are kind of cool. But after that, I think they got us into it when I was like 11 or 12. I can't remember too much of it. I think that we bowled a couple winter seasons and a summer or two. We had the whole Kmart experience. I had 2 different Brunswick Axuses, and my brother got a Wildfire. And you know, then when I got into high school, I started playing basketball and stopped bowling for a couple of years. Now, when I graduated high school, a friend of mine asked if I wanted to bowl on her team on Saturday mornings. And since you can be in youth leagues up until 21, I said sure. My first ball getting back into things was a blue urethane Columbia Tie Beast. You know, and I'm the type of person that doesn't have fun just participating in stuff. Like, I have to have success in something to really enjoy it. So my friend did it as kind of a family thing. Her mom and her dad and brother were all pretty good, and she wasn't too into it, but she still did it to have fun. Her brother was kind of the king of youth bowling in city at the time, and so naturally I tried to pay attention and was kind of a suck-up. I mean, I tuck my pinky when I bowl, and the only reason that I do that is because I saw that he did it and it looked cool, so I did it and it stuck, and I'm still doing it, and I'm not entirely sure I could throw a ball without doing it, so. My next ball was the Purple Brunswick Monster. And naturally going to reactive jumped my average a bit too. You know, as I said, a high gaming series pretty quick. I had my first 600 with it. And because it was a fingertip 16, and back 16 used to be man weight, so everybody threw 16. The Beast was a conventional 14. I couldn't afford a spare ball at the time, so I just had to learn to throw straight at stuff with the Monster. That's kind of also stuck too. So at this point, a plastic ball is kind of a waste of a spot in the bag for me. I can take anything and throw it dead straight, and have since then, because I didn't really have any other options at the time. Now, at the end of my first year, I bought the Storm Trauma right after it came out. I shot my first 700 with it, the first time out with it. It was also the last week of league for that year, and that's the ball that really hooked me on Storm. I collected a few more balls over the summer and into the next season, the last of which, for that little section of time, was the El Nino 2000. That was the ball that I kind of decided was the last one that I needed to complete my arsenal, because everybody had an arsenal. And about a month after I got it, I shot my first 300 with it. And it just so happens that today is the day it happened on 16 years ago. So that's a fun little bit of trivia there. Naturally, just the year before when I started, nobody had known who I was, and then I showed up and got decent pretty quick. I made a bunch of really good friends, most of whom I still have to this day, and I still see a few of them at league on a weekly basis. I stayed in youth as long as I could, and those couple of years were still the best couple of years that I've had in bowling, period. As far as fun and memories and just everything, I mean, we got to the point where we'd get up at like 6 o'clock in the morning. We'd all go have breakfast together before league. I mean, this is back when youth league started at 8 a.m. By the way, I mean, it's kind of hard to imagine now, but we'd bowl that, and then we'd go over to another center where they had to use scratch league, so. And for a while after that, I think I bought almost every single Storm ball that came out. I mean, I had all the Traumas but the Response. I had all the El Ninos. I had all the Erasers but the original. I had almost all the X Factors. I mean, this is when things got kind of unfortunate. I mean, I never really had bad form, but I didn't look as cool as a lot of the other people. And going into my first year of adult leagues, I thought I needed to look the part, because the big name adults saw my name in the paper virtually every week, and they were waiting for me. So I started tinkering with all kinds of things. Now, this is also when I got my start in the pro shop. I was there 3 to 4 days a week anyway, and he needed help. And the idea of cheaper equipment naturally was inviting to me. So being in a shop is a two-edged sword. You have the opportunity to learn and grow, but it's also one of those things where making everything more mental isn't necessarily the best idea, especially for somebody like me. I really ruined myself pretty badly for a couple of years. I played around with my fit and my mechanics, and I went to a 5-step approach and really didn't know what I was doing the whole time. I managed to kind of hold it together and popped in a score here and there, but there was a point where I dropped to 14 pounds. I was even throwing plastic for a while because reactives were just too much because of how bad I threw it, and it's also pretty embarrassing because I bowled a scratch trios league, and the owner of the shop and Rhino Page when he was here bowling for KU. I don't think at that point that I ever really contemplated quitting, but that was definitely my low by quite a long shot. Now, after that, I had a couple rather fortunate things happen. The owner of the shop sold it to someone else who already had his own operator, so I temporarily was out of the shop for a little while. Plus, around the same time, I had a pretty bad shoulder dislocation playing a pickup game of basketball trying to be Kobe Bryant. Obviously, I'm not Kobe Bryant, so that sidelined me for a little while, and it gave me a little bit of a chance to kind of reset. After my shoulder issue, I didn't really care what I looked like throwing the ball anymore. I just did what I had to do to make the ball do what I wanted it to do, and that kind of resulted in the funky thing that I have going on now, but, you know, hey, that's kind of how it's got to be, so. The next several years after that were the best scoring years I've had, period. I mean, I started shooting several honor scores a year. I built my ring collection up pretty nicely back when they gave you a ring for everything every year. I averaged almost 230, and life was good as far as bowling goes anyway. Then I got married. Dun, dun, dun. My wife came with a 12-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy, and life just got busy after that. I mean, that's all there was to that. I didn't bowl as much, I didn't buy as much, and my average dropped a little bit, but I was still doing really well until I kind of got burnt out. I mean, I was working a lot, and my ego kind of quietly got out of control. I was hitting things and yelling at everything, and that's when handicaps sucked and house shots were awful, and I was a freaking tool. So, I mean, that's about the best way to explain that. We found a house to rent, and we couldn't really afford bowling anymore, so I quit bowling in the middle of the year that year. It was a nice break, but I missed it, so beginning of next season, I got back into bowling. I got back into the pro shop, where I was mentored by a guy named Brian Zachary. He helped me kind of get my head straight, got everything ironed out, and really elevated my thinking and, state of mind. And then when he got moved over to a different store, I took over the shop, and that's kind of when some stuff hit the fan. My wife's daughter, who is now my daughter, I adopted her before her senior year of high school, that's been 4 or 5 years ago, I think, which was some kind of excitement there. I mean, my wife was raped when she was 13, and her daughter was the result, so we're now the 36-year-old parents of a nearly 22-year-old. But anyway, she graduated the summer that I took over the pro shop and was having kind of a rough time adjusting to this whole adult thing, so I was doing the pro shop thing 6 days a week, part-time, in addition to my regular full-time job, and the shop got so good so fast I was working a lot of extra hours. And after a solid year of 80, 90 hours a week, it just got a little bit too much. I mean, I quit my day job. I went to work at the pro shop full-time. That ended up being how I got my staff contract. Somebody told me who to talk to. My boss gave me a good reference, and I got sent a contract. So the funny thing is, with working in the bowling industry, you don't get to bowl much. And because in the industry, you need to be working when everybody else is bowling. Hence, you can't bowl very often. I mean, I was in a bowling alley 6, sometimes 7 days a week. And it was, just rarely was it to actually get to bowl myself. Now we arrive at earlier this year when I got an offer to do what I'm doing right now. I really couldn't refuse. I mean, it was a substantial raise, plus an opportunity to actually bowl again, and especially to get to go to some tournaments. I mean, even when I was bowling a lot way back when, I was still part-time in a shop for most of it. So I'd always work when the boss was off at the tournament. I've had a lot of ups and downs. I've sacrificed a lot for bowling. I actually turned down quite a few jobs and didn't go to school for a few things because it would have interfered with league or some kind of nonsense. But I've never really been good at anything before. I've always just kind of been on the positive side of average. So bowling just kind of became my thing. Now, how has it become? Has it all been worth it? I'm not really sure that I'm at the point yet where I can answer that. I think the answer is another decade or two down the road still, and while it's a lot of work for now, for not a whole lot of return at the moment, I'm more optimistic now than I used to be, even just a few months ago. So, as far as numbers go, I have 21 300s, I have 11 800s with a high of 823, and the longest strike string I've had is 21. I've won a few tournaments here and there, mainly just sweepers and kind of like city events and stuff like that. I have a lot of second place finishes and stuff. I have a 195-ish average at Nationals. Syracuse next year will be my 9th tournament. I'm also going to the Greater Tulsa Open for the first time this year. I've heard a lot about that, so that'll be fun. And then, of course, Greater Ozarks in Springfield, Missouri. That's become kind of a regular annual deal. I think this year will be our 6th or 7th trip. Where everything goes from here, not a clue. I mean, I'm still practicing and learning and trying to improve across the board. I have my own personal delusions of grandeur, but I don't really know what that's in respect to. I'm kind of at a point where I don't really have any goals or anything to shoot for. I'm still a nobody in the middle of the country that kind of throws it weird and tends to go against the grain, and I don't exactly know what I want to do, but I know what I don't want to do, but I don't really have a clue what I actually want to do or where I want all this to go. I mean, I suppose I'm just kind of along for the ride at the moment and just going to see what happens. That's not really my thing, though. Like, aimlessness to me is just that. But sometimes life just requires keeping your feet moving in the right direction until you can actually get close enough to see the targets or the options that are available. So sometimes they're fuzzy or unclear, you just plain can't see any. And at that point, moving, even aimlessly, is still better than just sitting somewhere where you know what's going on and where you know nothing's going to happen. So I appreciate all of you that have made it all the way through sitting here listening to me ramble about myself this whole time. We'll get back to some kind of regular programming this week, but hopefully I answered a few questions and maybe gave you a little bit more insight into some of my perspectives and angles on things. It's just, for me, it's always kind of been a case of being on the outside looking in, but that's kind of okay because I've gotten a really good look at the inside without actually being inside, and I'm not entirely sure that's where I want to be, but at least not in the capacity that I thought in the first place. The actual bowling thing, nah, but it'd be fun to rep a tournament or something. I think that I'm kind of that mental type that's a lot better teaching something or coaching somebody than actually doing it myself. So again, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Right now, I just kind of need to see what happens at the end of the year and what happens going into next year and kind of go from there. So that's going to wrap this up for this week. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next Friday.